everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going over a back to school must-have. Today, we are going over the Carly from Sallie Tomato. Now, this is part of their mini pattern series. It is a quick scrap busting project. Honestly, it uses such a small cut of material that it's not even gonna make that big of a dent in your scraps, so you can make a lot of these, like for everybody. It's so cute. Let me just walk you through the pattern real quick. First, as you can see, it is a nice small size. We have a zipper up top. We open up that zipper. Let me find a card. And then we have this little ID window here, so we can just plop your card in there. So this would be great for lunch cards. This would be great for passes to theme parks, for library cards, for driver's licenses, anything like that. So you have that ID window right there, and then behind it, you actually have this nice little coin purse. You can put your receipts, coins, anything in there, right? Lots of fun stuff, some cash in there. And then zip that up on the back. This is so clever. You have 3 card slots. Now, let me pull out this card real quick. So as you can see, these do fit credit cards. So you can put a couple different credit cards here, driver's license in the front, a bit of cash in the inside, and then you have a beautiful little wristlet, and you're good to go. This is so cute. It is so much fun. Sallie Tomato did send me this pattern as well as a kit. I do highly recommend the kit. I will have a link for it down below. But the kit is going to help you a lot if you're not used to projects that require vinyl or cork and leaving the edges raw, which is what we're doing today. We're going to do this with vinyl or cork, and you're going to be leaving all of these edges raw. So as you can see on this one, I did edge coat my edges, which is like a paint, which I've done in other projects. I will have a tutorial going over just edge coating in and out as I'm still learning the process. This comes together so fast. It's so cute. It's so useful. I mean, as soon as I made this one, I had multiple people asking me to make them for them because they could use them. So I do highly recommend this version. However, I know that many of you will say, I love it, it's adorable, but I've got this amazing quilt cotton or this cotton woven fabric and I want to use it so bad, it's so cute. Is there any way I can use that material instead of vinyl on this? So yes, I played with the pattern a bit and I made another version with quilt cotton. So there is still vinyl in here. Let me just show you. So the outer panel is quilt cotton and Decovil heavy. The back card slots are still vinyl. And if you really just don't want to use vinyl at all, just don't put the back card slots on and just call it a day. You don't need them. But if you do want to do these card slots, I do suggest you use vinyl or cork. It does still have the zipper up top. I did use the quilt cotton for the little slip pocket here inside. And then I did use vinyl for the D-ring strap just because this is going to get pulled on a lot. You want this piece right here to be as durable as possible, which I always suggest cork, vinyl, something like that for a D-ring strap. I also changed this a little bit by using 1/2-inch hardware instead of 1-inch hardware, which is what the original pattern calls for. And then if you don't want to do a wristlet, you could definitely do like a lanyard. Now this is probably a good size for a kid. It's a little tight around my big head, but it would work really well on kids. So this would be great for lunch passes, library cards, you name it. Honestly, this is just so stinking useful. So I'm going to walk you through both of these today. First, we're going to follow the pattern as is. I will be showing you that using the material in the kit. So if you buy the kit, you'll know exactly how this goes, exactly how it's going to turn out, okay? What I like about the kit is that it has a more lightweight cork, and if you get the kit, then now you know this is the thickness of material I should probably be looking for. So if you go for vinyl, if you're brand new to vinyl, maybe skip the really thick, super glittery, sticky vinyl for this one. Maybe wait until you've got a little bit more practice under your belt and then do that one. So start with cork, lightweight, non-sticky vinyl, things like that, and then move on to the more challenging stuff. After we go through this pattern completely, then we will go through this, and I will show you how to do this with quilt cotton and how to attach everything. We'll walk through the pattern mostly. I'm probably not going to show you every single step of this one because I will have already done that with the vinyl one, but I will make sure you have everything you need in order to accomplish this with quilt cotton as well. So as always, thank you so much to Sallie Tomato for allowing me to use your patterns in my tutorial. Sallie Tomato has so many patterns. I mean, it's overwhelming because I want to do all of them right now. So check out their website. I will have a link for this pattern down below. Go check out their other patterns. Leave a comment down below which one you want to see next from them, because I just want to do all of them. It's overwhelming. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, anything at all, leave them down in the comment section. I will have timestamps for all of this. You're going to want to use the timestamps today depending on what it is you're trying to do. All right, let's get started with the cork version, following the pattern as is first, using the kit material, and then we will dive into the hacks and extras. All right, so like I said, I am using the kit material, but here is all you really need. There's not much at all to this. The main thing you're gonna need is a 1/4 yard of material. This is a more lightweight cork. This is perfect for this, especially if you're just starting out, or a more lightweight vinyl would also work. Just avoid anything that's really thick. Just stick with kind of thinner cork or vinyl. And the thing about cork and vinyl is that we can leave the edges completely raw. It doesn't even look bad. It's not gonna fray. It's not gonna cause any problems. So that's what we're shooting for here, is raw edges. Next, you're gonna need 5 inches or longer zipper tape and a zipper pull. So really scrap zipper stuff too. And then you're gonna need a small cut of clear vinyl. Now, clear vinyl comes in lots of different weights and colors and options, so I do suggest you get creative with this. I will have a link down below for the clear vinyl that I typically like to use and what gauge it is. I'm honestly very bad at judging what gauges this are, so I'm not sure what gauge this is here, but it's not, you know, so if I put my finger out like this, it will balance flat. It doesn't just drape around my fingers. So it's not super thin, but it's, I mean, you can use clear vinyl, honestly, from packaging on, you know, shower curtains, on bed sheets, all kinds of packaging. So you don't even need to go buy clear vinyl. Honestly, you just need clear vinyl. It doesn't have to be that particular. Next, we have our hardware. This is 1-inch triangle ring. You could also use a D-ring here, and then a 1-inch swivel hook. I do like these particularly because they are more lightweight. The D-rings and the swivel hooks can start getting very, very heavy. For example, on this first one that I tested the pattern out on, this swivel hook is very big. So I would suggest using more lightweight hardware, which Sallie Tomato does carry, or even downsizing to 1/2 inch, which is what we're gonna do in the next tutorial. So here are all the pattern pieces all cut out. The only piece you need a pattern piece for is this little card slot pocket here. The rest are just rectangles. So you're gonna have 2 of these longer strips for your strap, and the strap is really cool how it's put together. So make sure we follow the instructions. I'll show you a different way in the second one, but for the first one, let's follow the instructions. You have 2 of those, and then you have your main body. Now this is actually gonna be folded in half like that. So if you have a directional print, make sure you think about that. It's gonna be folded in half, with the longer edges becoming the short sides. Next, we have a cut of our cork that's going to be the backing for the card slot pocket. So this is for that clear window. You want a backing piece for that so then you can put stuff behind that afterwards. Then we have a little D-ring connector here, 2 credit card slots, and then this is the bottom credit card slot. So I'll just show you, they kind of stack up just like that on the back of your wallet. And then I have my little label here, and I like to put that on the back of this credit card slot. I will have a link down below for where I get these made. I absolutely love them. They come in vinyl or leather. All right, here's all the other stuff. As always, you know, a good amount of clips. I will be using this Fiskars, what is this? X-Acto knife. This is like a little X-Acto knife. It's helpful for cutting out the card slot pockets in the zipper pocket. So I'll be using that for more precise cutting. For marking on fabric, I always like to have an air erasing marker and then a vinyl marker. I will be using my Beacon 3-in-1 glue. You probably don't need glue, but I found it much easier to glue things together, let it dry, and then sew it. I'll show you that. And then, of course, I have my seam ripper and stiletto. My thread, once again, is this variegated thread. I absolutely love it. And then for the bobbin, I have a thinner weight thread. And then my needle of choice is an 8012 Microtex needle from Schmetz, and then some double-sided tape to help with installation of the zipper. I'll have links for all of this down in the description of this video. All right, so you're gonna refer to the pattern, and they're gonna give you a series of lines to mark. You're gonna have 4 vertical lines to mark, and then 4 horizontal lines to mark. Essentially what this does is it creates your window for your clear vinyl, for your card ID, whatever you wanna put there, and then another little rectangle over here for the zipper. So once you have all these rectangles marked, you can just grab your X-Acto knife, or you can use scissors if you're more comfortable, and you're going to cut out these 2 inner rectangles. So we have one right here and then another one right over here in the middle. All right, once you have your rectangles cut out, this is what it should look like. See, we've got our little window here for our card and then our zipper here. It's just, I just love how simple things like this can be. So let's grab your zipper and make sure you put your zipper pull on your zipper tape. All right, so we want the zipper to be going up towards the top. So to help with that, we're gonna grab some double-sided tape. Now this is the Dritz wash away tape and it's 1/4 inch, and I'm just gonna lay it right along the edge of my zipper tape as far away from the zipper teeth as I can get it, because I just don't want this accidentally peeking through on the right side in the end. Okay, so I have the wash away tape on both sides of my zipper tape. So now I'm just gonna remove one edge first, so just the paper from one of them. And then I'm just gonna take my exterior unit and center it over that zipper tape on the sides as well. And then push down along the edge that I removed the paper from. So now one side of my zipper tape is stuck down. I can just flip this up and then remove the paper from that one. Flip down my exterior. There we go. And if you have some zipper tape peeking through on the side, that's okay. We're gonna cut it anyways to make it fit properly. But big thing is we'd like our zipper to be as centered as possible. I think I need to adjust mine a little bit. All right, once you have that taped in place, now we're just gonna go to the sewing machine and just top stitch around this entire rectangle that has the zipper in it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. That's just gonna hold it in place. I do find that back stitching over the zipper coils on both sides is helpful because this does get a lot of use here, and you wanna make sure that those threads don't break with the zipper going back and forth, you know what I mean? All right, so after you have this sewn in place, make sure you check the back so that you can see your zipper tape got caught completely. The zipper tape is nice and wide, so you should be good. And what I've been doing, instead of back stitching at the beginning and the end of my stitching, I am now pulling these threads to the back. It just gives it a cleaner look. Now, I know I did back stitch over the zipper, so it's kind of like, well, you back stitch there, why not just back stitch everywhere? I get it, I know. But this is just a habit I've gotten into. So on the back here, I have my 2 bobbin threads from the beginning and the end, and I just kind of pull on those. And as I pull on one of them, I can see the top thread kind of looping back here. So I just use my stiletto and then pull that top thread to the back. Do the same thing with the other bobbin and top thread combo. There we go. So now all 4 threads are on the back of my material, so I can just separate them into 2 threads on each side, and I just triple knot it. There we go. Once that's nice and secure, I'll trim it down with some scissors. And then I typically like to burn the raw edges as well. Oh dear, a little bit of a fire. But be careful when you're doing that, obviously. But I like to burn the edges of the thread just to, I think that secures it, kind of melts them all together. You don't want to burn it so much that you're burning off the thread and then it's like, why did you even bother tying it? It's just going to come through the front. You just want to burn them so that they hold the thread in place. I don't know. Okay, so now we're going to trim down our zipper tape. We don't want this zipper tape to be in the seam in the end, so we're going to just pull it up. We're going to trim it between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 inch away from your stitching. Now this is where it's helpful. If you back stitched over your zipper tape, you shouldn't have to worry about this fraying or anything like that. And again, depending on your zipper tape, if you're using like a nylon zipper tape, you can burn the edge of your zipper tape so that you don't have to worry about it fraying. So do this on both sides. All right, there you go. Now you have your zipper installed. Isn't that easy? And then in the end, what will happen is this just folds in half and your zipper's up top. So quick and easy. Okay, so now we're going to deal with our clear window. And I forgot to show you this in the beginning. But having some like gift wrap tissue paper, parchment paper, some really thin, lightweight paper that doesn't have any wax or anything like that on it is going to help you. So I'm just going to tear off this piece. And I just want to make sure it's bigger than my clear vinyl, which is good. So now we want to stitch our clear vinyl over the opening for that window. So you can definitely use clips to hold this in place, or you can grab some masking tape and use that, because masking tape can be sewn over without problem. So I'm just going to add some masking tape to the sides here. So now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch this with the right side of the exterior facing up. We're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch around all 4 corners, making sure we're catching that clear vinyl. this clear vinyl is gonna wanna stick to the bottom of your sewing machine. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this tissue paper underneath it, and I'm actually gonna sew through the tissue paper. And I'm just gonna keep it there the whole time, and then I can just rip it out, no big deal. Since we're not sewing directly on this clear vinyl, you shouldn't need any sort of silicone presser foot. You shouldn't have any problems with sticking. This should be pretty easy. All right, you can see I did leave my tails again. I didn't backstitch, so let's flip this over and remove the paper. All right, once all that mess is removed, we can just pull the top threads to the back, just like we did with the zipper, and then just tie off about 2 or 3 knots, and you can melt it with your lighter if you'd like. You don't have to though. Just make sure you trim these tails before you light it. Don't light all this thread on. Don't light it all on fire. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is just trim down the clear pocket a little bit. So my clear pocket is over extending into my zipper. So I don't want that. So I trim down the top edge of that clear pocket, and then what I do is I actually pull up my zipper tape, which still has that double-sided tape right here on the edge, and I tuck in that edge of the clear pocket underneath my zipper tape, see? That way I don't have to worry about kind of getting any cards hung up on the top edge of that clear pocket. So just tuck it back down and that should be good. So I'm also gonna trim down the bottom edge here because I don't want the clear vinyl in the seam when I'm completed. So I'm just trimming it down to like 1/8 of an inch or so. All right, there we go. So now your zipper and your clear pocket are done. And now we're gonna move on to the backing for this pocket. So it's gonna be the little slip that goes in the back to hold your license or card in place so that you can then use the rest of the pouch for other things. Okay, now as you can see, I did not trim down the shorter edges here of my clear vinyl. You don't want to, you wanna leave that the right size. So now you're gonna take your PC vinyl or cork and you're gonna lay that right side down over the back of your clear vinyl, and it should line up with the size of your clear vinyl. So what you want to make sure of here is that it's not all the way down on the edge. It should be just a little bit above the edge, but it should be covering the pocket completely. So you might want to just hold it in place and flip it over, take a look. There we go. Once again, I'm going to use masking tape to help hold this in place. And I'm just eyeballing this here, but I'm trying to make sure it's centered over that opening and centered on my exterior. It's not all the way down on the bottom here, so I won't catch it. In the end, we're going to sew it all together at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, so it doesn't have to be too far away from the edge. I don't want this bottom edge to be really bulky when I'm sewing over it. So I'm just going to tape down the sides. There we go. So now we're going to top stitch from the right side, and we're not going to go around all 4 edges. We're only going to go around the 2 short edges in the bottom. So on these 2 shorter edges, we're going to top stitch 3/8 of an inch away from this raw edge here, and then 1/4 of an inch away down here on the bottom from the raw edge of your pocket. It can be kind of tricky to see because we might not be able to use the markings on the foot of our bed. So it's 1/4 inch away from your top stitching on the sides, and then 1/8 of an inch away from the top stitching on the bottom. Just think about that. If you need to, use an air erasing marker and you can draw out those lines first. You just want to make sure you do get this right, because if it's a little bit smaller, then the cards might not fit in this pocket, and if it's a little bit too big, you might not catch the back edge of the pocket. So take your time and plan this out before you stitch it down. All right, and as you might have noticed when I was stitching this down, I start at the top stitching that goes around the zipper, and then I go down. The reason I do that is because sometimes when I'm starting over here by the window, I don't really catch the top edge of this pocket right here. And then I noticed that when I was using it, this top edge would be pulling on those stitches that were below it. So just to make sure I completely get this top edge, I start at the top stitching where the zipper is and then go down and around the entire slot. So now let's remove our tape, and just like I've been doing, I'm pulling the top thread to the back side so I can tie off my threads and secure them back here. All right, there we go. Now you can definitely grab a card here and test out this little slip pocket if you like. Just big thing is make sure you didn't accidentally sew over the top, okay? Because that won't be fun. But there we go. How fun is that? And there's a lot of really fun clear vinyl you could play with this. So I highly encourage you to do that. Okay, so now we just got to do the credit card slots on the back. All right, so here are 3 pieces for the credit card slot. I am going to attach my label to the bottom slot, so it's the rectangle. So as you can see, I'm just kind of centering it, I'm eyeballing it, and then I'm going to add a piece of tape to the back. This is just that double-sided tape. And then I can just tape it on. Now the nice thing here is that none of this is getting turned out, so you don't really have to worry about a seam allowance. Everything is just going to be top stitched at 1/8 of an inch. So how you see it here is how it's going to look in the end. So I'm just going to quickly top stitch around my label at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, there we go. Now my bottom one is all ready to go. So before we attach these, let's prep them. We're going to top stitch along the top edge of each one of these at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You might want to back stitch at the beginning and the end of each one because these aren't going to be in a seam. They're going to be raw still. So just to make sure that stitching doesn't come out, back stitching will be helpful. If you're using some sort of vinyl and you want to do your edge coating, then edge coat the top edge of each of these 3 pieces first, let that dry, and then do the rest of this. All right, those top edges are prepped. Now we're gonna flip these over and work on the back. So we're gonna add some double-sided tape to the bottom edge of each of these. So yeah, some of these are very small. You can see I just kind of line them all up like that. And then I'll trim the tape between each one of them. The nice thing about this cork is that tape really, really likes to stick to it. So that's great for a double-sided tape, but if you're using masking tape, it could be a little bit hard to get the masking tape off. So now we're going to grab our wristlet, and the pattern has the exact measurements of how far this pocket, the first one, which is using the pattern piece, is going to be away from the edge, and how far it needs to be from the bottom. So get your ruler out and make sure you measure from the bottom and also on the edge. If you'd like, you can definitely draw a little line down here that won't be seen in the end. So draw a line down here on the bottom to mark that part, and then just use your ruler to help guide you over here on the left. So once you have everything lined up, you're just going to remove the tape that's on the bottom of this pocket piece and tape it in place. You can grab a clip here to help hold it in place too, if that's helpful. All right, now we're just going to top stitch along this bottom edge here. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, now the second one is going to be taped in place, and it's going to be at 1/2 of an inch up from the bottom edge here. And you want to make sure that this top edge does cover the bottom little tabs here on the first one. So I know it can be just barely covering it, but it does need to cover that. All right, so as long as it's covering it even ever so slightly, that's fine. All right, so now let's top stitch along the bottom of this second pocket. All right, finally take your third pocket piece, which is that rectangle, and here's the thing, it should line up on the bottom edge and also cover these pockets here. Mine doesn't, so if I line my rectangle up on the bottom edge of my exterior panel, the bottom of these tabs here in the middle, it just peeks through. So I am more concerned about covering these bottom tabs than I am with it lining up on the bottom edge here, because I can fix that later. So I'm going to remove my tape, and what I'm doing is I'm just lining it up so that it ever so slightly covers the bottom edge of that center pocket tab, and then I'll stick it down. So yeah, mine is about 1/8 of an inch away from this bottom edge here. I'm honestly okay with that. I can trim this down later if I'd like, or I can just top stitch along that edge and also the other part. That doesn't bother me. So now we're going to top stitch along the sides of the 3 card slot pockets. I know they're a little difficult to see on the camera, but make sure each card slot pocket is slightly overlapping the one underneath it, and we're going to top stitch along both of the sides. Don't worry about the bottom just yet. Alrighty, there we go. All 3 of our card slot pockets are now stitched on. You can back stitch over the top edge of each pocket if you'd like. So as you're going up the side, just back stitch over the top edge. That will make this last longer, especially if it's getting a lot of heavy use. So now grab your strap connector and your D-ring or triangle ring, whatever you're using, and just thread it through just like that. And you can grab a clip to hold it in place. What I actually like to do is use some glue here. So I will open this up, and then I'm just going to glue right along the edge and then add a clip. I found with working with raw edges like this, glue is very helpful. All right, so now all we have to do is close this up and then make our strap. So you're just going to fold this in half and line up the edges. So just give it a look real quick, make sure it's all good. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add glue right along the edge. You could use tape here or just clips if you want. You honestly don't have to use any sort of sticky stuff. But I'm going just right along the edge. You don't want to go too far in because you won't be able to use much of this little wristlet because it'll all be glued shut. So you just want to go right along the edge like 1/8 of an inch. A light amount of glue, not a ton of glue. All right, so I just do glue around one side And then I'll fold these wrong sides together. Line up the corners first, and then clip the corners. And if it's not all perfectly even, if it's a little bit wavy, like mine's a little bit wavy, don't worry about it. We will be able to clean that up. Just get those corners together first, and then glue the edges. And if you have a preference on which side your snap tab is going to go, think about that now. If you're going to wear this like a necklace or a wristlet, it should go on the same side as the zipper, so that way when it's hanging, the zipper opens going down. So I'm going to add it over here on the top, right next to my zipper pull when the zipper pull is closed. Just open it up before it glues itself shut completely, and nest your little D-ring in here. There we go, nice and close. You should get it as close as you possibly can. All right, and then just add some clips, and that way the glue will just dry around that tab. All right, there we go. So now I'm gonna let the glue dry while we work on the wristlet strap, and then we'll return back to this. All we have to do is top stitch around this, and then we're done with this part. So now the strap is pretty cool. There's lots of ways to do straps like this. Do whatever one you're comfortable with, but I suggest you give this one a try too, just to learn something new if you haven't already done this. Take both of your strap pieces and lay them right sides together and perpendicular, just like that. Grab a marker and mark on the back of the top one, from the top left edge down to the bottom right edge where it overlaps the bottom strap. I'm just making a diagonal between them. Grab a clip to hold it in place, and now let's go stitch right along that marked line. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, once you have these stitched together, we're gonna trim off this triangle, but don't trim it too short. You wanna trim it about 1/4 of an inch. So we wanna have some room here to actually sew it down. So trim it 1/4 of an inch. If you have any overhang on either of the sides, trim that down too, so that it's just nice and straight on the angles. And now we're gonna flip this out so that both of them are right sides up, and now it should be one long continuous straight strip. On the back here, spread open that seam with your fingers so that it's just like this. And now, keeping it spread open, go back to the machine and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away on each side of that connecting seam, and that's gonna hold these pieces down in place to get this as flat as possible. All right, once you have these top stitched together, grab your swivel hook and then just thread your strap through the swivel hook just like this. And now we're going to connect the raw edges of this the same way we did up here. So once again, we're going to make sure everything is super straight first. Like, put your fingers in there, make sure it's all very straight, okay? And then we're going to lay them right sides together, perpendicular. And the hardest part here is just making sure you don't get this all twisted around, because it's going to look twisted while we do this, but then when we're done, it shouldn't be twisted. So you're gonna mark that diagonal line again. So you're going to the innermost top edge down to the innermost bottom edge, just like that. And now let's stitch along that line. All right, so once you have these stitched together, go ahead and turn it right side out just to check and make sure everything is good. All right, that's good. So just like we did before, let's trim this down to 1/4 inch seam allowance. There we go. And then push open that seam with your fingers so it's nice and flat on the back. And then let's top stitch along both edges of that seam at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now the little bit of a different part. We're gonna fold this strap so that the wrong sides are together. So I like my seams, I don't know if I want my seams to be towards the top and the bottom by the swivel, like that. I think I do. I like the seam, so I have one seam here right next to the swivel, and then I have another seam all the way up here at the top. So I'm gonna have it just like that, and we're gonna clip these so that they're wrong sides together. So you see, this isn't really a loop with the raw edges as part of it. We're going to sew these together so that the raw sides are facing each other. And then all we'll have is the right side showing in the end, which is what makes this strap pretty cool. All right, so now we're going to top stitch along both of these long edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You don't need to top stitch along the short parts just yet. So we're just doing the long edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. There we go. Now we just have one long piece of cork, but it's all right sides. So go along the edge here, and if you have any overhang from one side where the raw edges are peeking through, just trim that down. If you wanted to edge coat this, you could, but it gets a little tricky around the swivel hook over here, so I don't think it's necessary. So now I have different threads for my top and bobbin. So my top thread is right here, my bobbin thread is over here. I'm gonna have the bobbin thread be the bottom of the loop. So I'm gonna fold this wrong sides or bobbin side together, just like that. So the folded edge is coming up to meet my swivel hook. And that way my top thread is what you see on the outside of the wristlet. So I'm just sliding the fold so it's right underneath my swivel hook, just like this, as close as I can get it to the swivel hook. And now I'm going to top stitch along this folded edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You could also add a rivet here, or you could make a little box. Maybe I'll do a box. Let's try a box. Or you can just do 1/8 of an inch stitch and then 1/4 of an inch stitch and 1/2 an inch. You could do a few stitches. The thing is you want to get this as secure as possible. So one row of stitching is probably not going to be enough. Figure out some way to add more stitching to secure this, or a rivet. All right, there we go. So I did a small little rectangle, and it actually looks pretty good. I notoriously use rivets because my ability to stitch a box is virtually impossible. But this actually turned out quite nice. So there you go. Now there's your little wristlet strap. Isn't that cute? Okay, now let's go back to our wallet here. It should be completely dry. Your glue should be good. So let's just go around all 4 edges, top stitching at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once again, I don't backstitch, but you definitely can. I would suggest it if you're not comfortable with pulling the thread through and tying it, so you can backstitch at the beginning and the end at these corners. But I will be pulling my threads again, so I'm just going to leave the tails nice and long at the beginning and the end. All right, here we go. As you can see, I've got my thread hanging out everywhere, so I'm just gonna pull it to the back side, tie it off, and burn the little knots. So here is the predicament I'm in right now. My top stitching did not catch the bottom edge of this pocket, and if you remember, I said the pocket was a little short. It didn't go all the way down. So I will put a note in at the beginning of this video to add like 1/4 inch to the bottom edge of this pocket, so that way you can trim it down if you need to. I do need to secure this though. So I am going to go back to the front here. And as you can see, I have a little pinch here. This cork is a bit stretchy, which can be a little tricky. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do another row of stitching right along this edge, making sure I catch that bottom edge. And I'm okay with having 2 rows of stitching here, but I can also trim this down if I need to. We'll see, let me see. Okay, so that second row of stitching I did a little bit further in, it did catch the bottom edge of my card slot pocket, which is what I wanted. So here's what I'm gonna do. This is a little wild. Well, let's see. First, I'm going to pull through my thread from the new stitching. I'm gonna take the thread from the outermost stitching out. And I'm sorry if this is confusing, but you know, this kind of stuff happens, and I want to show you how I work through it, because I know it can seem a little defeating when it doesn't go exactly the way you want it to. So I am just looking at the stitching that is on the innermost line that I just made, and I'm going to tie off the knot for that. Because what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim off that other top stitching that was too far away. So on the bottom as well here, since I had to add an extra row of stitching, I have more little threads I got to address. I'm just gonna tie a knot. All right, so I have that extra stitching to secure the bottom edge in place, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna trim my exterior panel right along the bottom edge of that card slot pocket. So the one I was trying to get in there, I'm now making it so that the card slot pocket is along the bottom edge of my exterior. And as you can see, when I did that, I trimmed off that top stitching. And there we go. And now that bottom edge is secured in place, and the top stitching looks continuous all the way around. So now just go around and straighten up your edges. So I have some overhang over here I'm going to trim off. I have some overhang on the front I want to trim off. All right, there we go. Look how cute that is. And then you can just attach your wristlet on there. Nice and easy. I think that's adorable. All right, let's just make sure these card slot pockets work. They do. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Nice. And then let's make sure that it goes in here. There we go. That fits in there nice. Very cute. All right, so that is the full tutorial going through the pattern as is with the material provided in the kit. Now, let's play with this a little bit. All right, I'm not going to walk you through the entire tutorial again. I'm just going to provide each hack and the steps for that hack, and then you're going to continue on with the tutorial as normal. First hack, using this pretty soft fraying quilt cotton as our exterior. So for that, you're going to need a piece of Decovil Heavy. This is just like we did with the Purse Pal. You're going to get a piece of Decovil Heavy and you're going to use that as your vinyl, and we're just going to wrap this around it. All right, so here's my Decovil Heavy, and I marked all the lines on it just like I did with my cork in the first one. And now I'm going to cut out those windows just like I did before using an X-Acto knife. All right, there we go. Now what we're going to do is just fuse this on to the back. Now you can see this is a directional print, so I have to decide which direction do I want it to go. The back is going to be covered up with card slots, honestly. And this pattern is best if you don't add the card slots and you have fabric like this, because you're not going to see a whole lot of the fabric, but I think I'm going to have the direction go just like this. So I'm going to flip this over and make sure my window is on the bottom. Okay, so I'm honestly just not that picky about this. So I'm just going to put my fabric over the Decovil Heavy, and you can see my fabric is cut quite a bit bigger than the Decovil Heavy. That's exactly how I want it. So I'm just going to flip this over so it's centered. Then I'm going to grab my iron, and on the highest heat with lots of steam, I'm going to fuse my Decovil Heavy to the back of my quilt cotton. Now this cotton woven fabric has no interfacing on it, no SF101, nothing like that. It's just the fabric. All right, so we've got the quilt cotton fused to this. Now what we want to do is grab a ruler and rotary cutter and trim down the quilt cotton so that it is 1/4 of an inch away on all of the edges. All right, now after you have the outer edge trimmed down by 1/4 of an inch, we need to trim up the inner edges as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line, and I'm just eyeballing this, that is centered on my zipper opening here. And then I'm going to angle off that center line to the corners. This is just like how we normally install zippers and purses. We're going to angle this off. And I'm going to cut along the center line and then those triangles. That way each edge of this rectangle will be wrapped with fabric. I'm going to do the same thing here in this bigger panel. So again, I'm just lengthwise, I'm just eyeballing the middle, and then I'm going to go off towards the corners. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to be something. There we go. So now you can see I have center lines and triangles, and I'm going to cut along those. So to start with the zipper one, I'm going to just seam rip along the center line and then cut along that line till I get to the tip of one of my triangles over here. And then I'm going to cut along that triangle until I get to the corner of my Decovil Heavy. Try not to go all the way to the corner. Leave just like a teeny tiny bit of fabric overhang, so that way you don't have to worry about it splitting on you or fraying or anything. Just like that. And like that. Okay, I'm going to do that same process for this bigger window here. All right, so once you have all of these cut so that your windows are good, you can see when we wrap this around, that's what I wanted. I wanted the Cheshire Cat right there. That made me happy. Okay, so now I have a glue stick. This is a fabric glue stick. You could also use an Elmer's glue stick. And I'm first going to glue down the outer edge. So to start, I'm going to work on the corners. So the corners, I just come in with my glue stick and I'm just gluing that corner. And then I fold the edge of the corner straight down like that. There are different methods to deal with corners and wrapping things. This is just what I found easiest, and it works. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm just folding those corners in like that and sticking them on the glue. All right, once all your corners are done, now use your glue stick and just go right along the straight edge of your Decovil Heavy. And then once you have one edge prepped, fold the fabric around so that it glues down onto that Decovil Heavy. All right, so just continue doing this. And you could have cut this 3/8 of an inch as well on some parts. Like the top and the sides here, that 3/8 of an inch would have been fine for your overhang of fabric. But down here, we just have the skinny bit right here, so we really don't want to go too big with our raw edges poking over. All right, just make sure you glue down all 4 outer edges. All right, turn it over, take a look, looking good. So now we're going to deal with these inner rectangles. So let's start with the zipper first. So once again, we're just going to glue right along the edge on the Decoville Heavy. There we go. And now I'm going to push the back side of that fabric around that edge that has the glue, just like that. I'm going to do the other long side as well. Okay, and then do the short edges. And I use lots of glue. I'm not conservative with the glue. I like to really get it to stick. All right, flip to the front, looking good. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing with this bigger pocket, but this bigger pocket is going to need to be addressed after we glue it, because as you can see, when we fold this down, it goes off the edge, same here. So we're just once again going to glue right along the edge on the Decoville Heavy, and then fold the fabric back. So you can see here on the long edge, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just folding it back, even though it does cover the window for my zipper. That's okay, because I'm not gluing all the way up here. I'm only gluing right along the edge on my Decoville Heavy. So that's the part of the fabric that's going to stay. Okay, let's let that glue dry a little bit, and then we'll work on another hack and then revisit this. But you can see this is what it's looking like. Isn't that cool? Love it. So the other hack I'm trying out is using this HTV as a liner. As the pattern's written right now, there is no liner for this. You don't need a liner, but since we have these raw edges of fabric and we don't want those fraying or coming up or causing a problem, I thought we could use a piece of HTV that we just fuse to the back of it, and that secures all the raw edges, and it also makes it look pretty. So this is just some glitter HTV. It's just fun. So on the back of this HTV, I'm going to mark the exact same lines that I did on the back of my Decoville Heavy, because I'm going to make the same windows. I still want it to be just like this. Okay, so I have those lines marked, and I'm going to cut them out just like I've been doing, except this time when I cut them, I'm actually cutting them just outside the line, because I want these openings to be a little bit bigger so that this HTV doesn't poke through on the right side of my panels. You know what I mean? I don't need it to come up right to the edge. I need to come up just almost to the edge. So that just means instead of cutting right on my line, I'm gonna cut just outside of it. All right, so I have those done. Let me just test this out. Yeah, it's just a little bit bigger than the rest. And now what I wanna do is I actually wanna trim off 1/8 of an inch off all 4 outer edges. I don't need this to be as big as this other piece. All right, there we go. So this should be a better size now, so that it will still cover all the raw edges, but it shouldn't be seen poking through anywhere. And if it does poke through a little bit on one of these windows or something, I can always trim it down. Okay, so now this glue should be dry enough for us to work with. So you can see I have this flap here overhanging. I don't want that. So I'm just lifting it up until it's pulling on the glue. I'm not trying to take it off the glue. I'm just lifting it straight up, and then I'm just going to cut with my scissors. See, it doesn't have to be clean and look good. It's just gotta be cut. And again, a big reason I'm not that concerned about all this is because all of these raw edges will be covered with my heat transfer vinyl. So let's go ahead and apply that now. So grab my pressing mat. I'm gonna use this, I'm gonna take my exterior and lay it right side down. And my heat transfer vinyl has that clear protective film that's facing up, so right side up. And just lay this out so that it's exactly where you want it. And I find that I have to do this in sections sometimes. So I'm just going to make sure it's all centered. I'm gonna hold it down with one hand. I got a scrap piece of quilt cotton here. It's pretty small, but that's okay. I'm gonna lay it over the section I'm gonna press first. Then I'm gonna grab my iron, and I'm gonna push it down, and it's on the highest heat and no steam, and I'm putting pressure down, and I'm holding it down for a few seconds. So ideally, you would fuse this on with a heat press of some sort. So a big heat press or a Cricut heat press, something like that, because it puts pressure on this. And that's what we want to do with HTV. So I'm just gonna move my scrap over. All right, I got a bigger scrap to make sure I don't melt anything. So now I'm just gonna go towards the middle portion of this. So the right side is already fused down enough. And I found that this is just easier rather than trying to fuse it all down at once, because then it kind of shifts around on me. All right, and then I'll push down this edge over here. Now let's fuse down the left side. All right, once I have all of it mostly down, now I'm going to give it a really good press. So I'm just gonna go in each section for about 10 to 15 seconds. Again, I'm putting force down on the iron. I'm not just letting it sit there. I'm actually pushing it down. This is much easier. I have that Cricut press. I should have used it, but that Cricut heat press, I'll have a link for it down below. This is much easier if you use that. And it will be bigger than this whole unit, so you can do it pretty quickly. Alrighty, so once this is cool enough to touch, peel off that clear plastic. And if you see your heat transfer vinyl, like the glitter stuff coming up too, then put it back down and fuse it for longer. But there we go. Well, that's looking great, isn't it? Isn't it pretty? All right, now let's just flip it over and give it a good press from the front as well, just for a little bit. All right, there you go. Now you can just treat this as a piece of vinyl. I mean, it's beautiful on the back. Isn't that fun? I love that. So now when you open it up, it's just a little pop of glitter, but I think that's so cool. And you can continue on making your wallet just like you did before. So the next hack I'm gonna show you is using quilt cotton for the little back piece right here. So we have the clear piece, and then we have the piece of fabric that goes behind it. So for the back piece that goes behind the card slot pocket, you could use a piece of vinyl as the pattern suggests. I actually think that would be best. I think a really fun, shiny vinyl back here would be really cool. But you could also use quilt cotton if you wanted to. Just make sure you double the height of that pattern piece. So just double the height of the pattern piece, and then all you have to do is fold it in half, and then top stitch along the top edge. And then you could just stitch it on the sides and the bottom as you do per the pattern, and you don't have to worry about the raw edge showing up here. So that is another hack. But I do think if you were going to include vinyl already for the card slots, then maybe just use that vinyl here too as a little pop. Because you can see, like with this print, it starts getting a little weird, like his head has moved from here to here. That's a little weird. Maybe I'll do it this way. Nope, then it would be upside down. That's even weirder. Okay, and the last hack I have is for the strap. So I cut this piece of quilt cotton. It is 48 inches long and 2 inches wide. So since this is quilt cotton, I don't want any raw edges on my strap, and I am using 1/2 inch hardware for my hack because I think 1/2 inch hardware is just nice and small and dainty, and I think it's great. So for 1/2 inch hardware, what we're gonna do is take our strip, lay it wrong side up, and fold it in half, wrong sides together, and use your iron and just press along the entire length of this strap. Now, 48 inches long means this is not a wristlet. This is more like a necklace lanyard. And you could even go shorter if this is for kiddos, or you can shorten it a lot and make it a wristlet. You play with the length of this, but I'm trying out 48 inches today. Because as I'm building this, if I need it to be shorter, I can always cut it shorter. And this quilt cotton is interfaced with woven interfacing. I don't think straps should be just quilt cotton. They need a little bit more help than that because they get used a lot. All right, once you have it completely folded in half, open it up, take your long raw edges and fold them up, wrong sides together to meet that midpoint fold you just made with your iron, and go along the entire edge. And go ahead and do this for both long edges so that all the raw edges are in the middle of your strap. All right, once you have both of these raw edges folded in, you're gonna fold the whole thing in half. So the entire strip should now be 1/2 inch wide, and there shouldn't be any raw edges on the long sides. So I'm just gonna add clips down the length of this to hold it in place. Okay, so once you have this clip, this is essentially how long it's going to be. So just test it out real quick and make sure it's not too long. Mine's not too long. Mine's pretty long, but I think it'll be okay for a lanyard. Okay, so before we stitch this, we actually need to attach our swivel hook. So while it's clipped like this, we're going to just slide our swivel hook on and just move it past a few clips. All right, so it just needs to be out of the way. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna close these ends together. So make sure you straighten out your strap completely. You don't want this to be all twisted around. And once you have it straight, you're gonna bring the ends right sides together. So you can unclip them, flatten them out, and bring them right sides together. So with them completely flat, clip along the sides to hold them together. And now let's just sew along the short edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, once you have that sewn together, press open that seam with your fingers and then refold the long edges in, just like they were before, and then refold the whole thing in half. Grab some clips and clip that together. All right, so this is what you should have. Make sure it's not twisted around or anything, it's all straight. And now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and just top stitch along both long folded edges at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, all the way around. Just move your swivel hook out of the way as you go. Okay, so once this is all top stitched, find that seam, and you can tell the seam, see it doesn't fold quite as nicely as the rest of it, so find that seam and then tuck your swivel hook right against the edge of that seam. So that way we don't have to worry about this bit bugging us at any point. So tuck that in there, and then I'm just going to stitch just a really small rectangle right here to hold this in place, and then our strap will be done. All right, that's secured in place, and that is my take on the wristlet strap. So this is more of a necklace, like a lanyard. So here is the finished wristlet part, or the card slot part. You can see I did add the vinyl card slots on the back. When I did this one, I actually started, when doing the measurement, I started 3/4 of an inch from the bottom edge, and that definitely helped to make sure that this bottom rectangle lined up with the bottom edge really well. So that's a tip I will throw in the beginning of the video. If you are struggling getting this lined up correctly like I did with the first one of these, just do 3/4 of an inch from this bottom edge. So I can just attach this, and there we go. That's adorable. All right, so what do you think? Isn't this adorable? This is the first one we did following the pattern with the kit. It turned out really well. I will say that I feel like this cork is a little stretchy, which could be a little challenging for a beginner. So you want lightweight cork or vinyl with no stretch. That's kind of like the best substance for a beginner if you're getting into vinyl. But either way, this worked out so cute. So you can see we have our little card slot pockets on the back. Love this. And this is the wristlet as is in the pattern. And then when we kind of hack together this little cutie patootie here, you can see I did decide to use vinyl for this backing for the clear pocket right here. I just used that glitter vinyl, which is the same vinyl I used on the back for the card slots. You don't have to use vinyl, and if you want to avoid vinyl completely, just don't add these card slots. Just make it just a basic badge holder. But this one I did make more of a lanyard, so let's just see. It's pretty long. I mean, you can't even see it. It's pretty long, so you could shorten this, but I like it a little bit longer. If it was for a kid, I would make it much shorter. This was, like I said, 48 inches long. I would go more towards 36. That would probably be better. A 36-inch long one would probably be better for most sizes, honestly. So let's open this up and see how it fits the card. There we go. We've got our card in there. And then when we open it up, we've got that little pink of sparkle in there. I love using HTV as lining. It's just a nice little extra. And honestly, I have a lot of heat transfer vinyl that I have had for years and haven't used yet. So I think that this is a great way to kind of eat up some of that material, but in an actual useful way. So I hope you love making these as much as I do. They are so much fun. They come together very quickly. And as you can see, there's a lot of things you can do with this. You can definitely change the size of this. If you wanted this to fit a bigger card, you could definitely add some length to the bottom here, make the window a little bit bigger. You can modify this in a lot of different ways, but just try it out first as is, and then play with the hacks, play with the size adjustments, and have some fun with it. So I hope you're having a great day. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.